We thank you for awakening us this morning, that we have another day to serve you, to come to understand you better. As we take up this study, we ask that you grant us the presence of your Holy Spirit, and that you would open our understanding of your word by pouring the Holy Spirit out upon us in latter rain power. We ask that you'd guide this class this morning, and we thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to Australia, Lord willing, in November, and the brethren over there are trying to prepare the three places where there are going to be meetings. They ran into something that I ran into when I was in Australia. There's a class of Adventists over there that were a part of the argument that took place with Louis Weir. Louis Weir is a deceased Adventist pastor. And I don't know all the issues, but he pretty much lived and breathed to address the problems in Uriah Smith's writings. I mean, of all the books he wrote, at least, he wrote a lot of little booklets, at least 60% of them, at my guess, somehow are dealing with the fact that Uriah Smith calls the king of the north Turkey in Daniel 11, and uses that technique consistently, Uriah Smith does, where he has a literal Armageddon going on in the book of Revelation. So Louis Weir was opposing that. Louis Weir had other things going on that I don't know his history. When we began to understand how the theological apostasy came into Adventism in the 1930s, and Dwayne did his presentation on the desolations of Jerusalem. If you listen real closely to that information, in the 1950s there began to be agitation about the theology, the Protestant theology that had been adopted in the 1930s. And there was some kind of meeting in California in the 1950s where that issue was agitated, that they turned away from Miller's proof texting, and they were going to the historical grammatical expertise. And Louis Weir was there in California, and I forget the details of what he was agitating. So he had more than just the Uriah Smith thing going on. But as I recall, I don't know that he got disfellowship, but he got defrocked. He was a ordained Adventist pastor, and at minimum they took his credentials away. And then if I remember it right, after he died they posthumously gave his credentials back. I think that's the word. Is it? Okay, big word. Small guy, big word.
That's what they did to my grandson too.
Yeah, maybe they didn't do it with him. I don't remember the details. But in any case, when we first started in this message, we used Louis Weir as a point of reference because we were dealing with Daniel 11, 40 to 45, because he had in his books a lot of nice insights on prophetic issues. But he had some errors. You know, he was wrong on the daily. He was wrong on the judgment of the living. So he had his own set of errors. So when I went to Australia, and we went to 3 different places, I was teaching that the judgment of the living is progressive. You know, it begins with the dead. At some point it moves to the living. It begins with God's church. Then outside of God's church, it goes along with the Sunday law crisis, which begins in the United States and then goes to all the countries in the world. So it's progressive at all kinds of levels. And he teaches that when the last thing Michael does is he blots out everyone's sins, he stands up, and everyone receives the seal of God. And there are a lot of people in Adventism that teach that. And they wrest some passages in the spirit of prophecy to make that case. And when you do that, you destroy all the light that she has about you receiving the seal of God, and then the latter rain being poured out upon you without measure, and you go out and do an evangelistic work, because if you only get the seal of God when your sins are blotted out and everyone's sealed simultaneously at the same point in time, there's no wiggle room to go out and bring in the 11th hour workers. It's a bunch of foolishness. So at each one of those 3 places in Australia, I had these people that had, from the controversy of Louis Weir from Australia, opposing Uriah Smith's teaching on thoughts on Daniel and Revelation, and it reaching such a point down there that they actually defrocked this guy. So it was an issue in Australia. So as I went to the various places, I got a gift in each of those from a different person in each of those 3 areas, and it was a used book I got three of the same books, all used, written by Louis Weir on the judgment of the living. And the reason the people were giving me used books is because they had all the underlining. They wanted me to go home and look at the emphasis that they put on this false teaching. So in Australia, you've got these zealots for defending Louis Weir, and then on the other side, you've got these zealots that have taken where Sister White says, Thoughts on Daniel and Revelation, the book is God's helping hand, and therefore they assume that everything in Uriah Smith's book is inspired, or close to it. They wouldn't say it that way. But all they want to do is defend Uriah Smith's book. There's no need for further investigation in Daniel and Revelation, because Sister White says this book is God's helping hand. Forget about it. This is all we need. So the people over there sent me an email, sister that we've been...
Which one, Terry?
No, Marie. An email that she's getting, that she's trying to prepare for these upcoming meetings. She's getting the same kind of resistance about, what we teach about Daniel 11. So I spent some time yesterday answering her, and I came across a quote that I've been wanting to go look up for this class. And this is, if you get in and look at this is a letter written to Frank Belden, and Frank Belden was Ellen White's nephew. And Frank Belden is in this story, if you're going to understand this story, about Uriah Smith, because during the 70s, 80s, or 90s, I don't know, 1880s, 1890s, somewhere in that time frame, the literature evangelists and Adventism had lost their spirituality. This is how I perceive it, because all they're wanting to do at this point is sell books that'll make money. And they're in conflict with Ellen White. She's saying the books we're supposed to be selling are The Great Controversy, Patriarchs and Prophets, and they're wanting Christ Object Lessons. They're wanting to set those books aside and go sell books that they think can generate funds. So there's this tension going on. And among the books of hers that she recommended they should be selling is where she also recommended Uriah Smith's Thoughts on Daniel and Revelation. And she put it in the same category as her books. But the literature evangelists, the publishing guys, they didn't want nothing to do with it. They were about trying to figure out how to make money. So there's tons of interaction on that theme in the Spirit of Prophecy. But one of them, and if you don't look closely, you don't realize what it is. It's her nephew who was in the publishing work, and he's destined to leave Adventism and reject Ellen White, who's his aunt. And he's a really famous guy. When you're looking through the Adventist hymnals, you'll see Belden, Belden, Belden. That's him. And I never knew, and I don't know the details of this, but I never knew this little part of it. But when he left the Adventist church and rejected his aunt's Spirit of Prophecy, there was such a turmoil over it that the Adventists, they only kept some of his hymns in his hymnals, and they got rid of other ones. So you can find more, I don't know if you can find more, but you can find many other Frank Belden hymns in hymnals outside of Adventism and Protestant hymnals that they rejected. That's how much animosity was against this guy when he finally left Adventism. But before he left Adventism, when he was in the publishing work, he's the one that asked a question. And if you don't do some research to know that he's the one asking this question, you don't get all this backdrop. And he asks Sister White the question, he says something like, so you say that Daniel and Revelation, the book by Uriah Smith, so you say Daniel and Revelation is inspired. And her answer is something like this: I will not dignified that question by giving an answer. She knew it was a sarcastic, question. But you can see it in there in her writings when you type in the right words. And if you don't know it's Frank Belden, you don't get the full gist of it. And so I was putting that together for them. And this is another one. This also is to Frank Belden, if you look it up. But it's a little bit, it's not on this point, but it's close to it. And it's the last paragraph of the 4 that I wanted to put in the record, that I often think about when we're struggling with these prophetic books. So I'll read the first paragraph. And we'll go around and read these four. This book, Revelation, demands close, prayerful study, lest it be interpreted according to the ideas of men, and false construction be given to the sacred word of the Lord, which in its symbols and figures means so much to us. There is so much that we positively must understand in order that we may shape our course of action so that we shall not receive the plagues which are coming upon the world. Brother Chuck?
In the revelation, the deep things of God are portrayed. Those whose heart are wholly sanctified to God will be brought nigh to see priceless gems through the telescope of faith. And as they apply the truth to practice, the still deeper mysteries are stamped on the soul. Those thus honored are to communicate to others that which they have received. And as they do this, angels make the impression upon hearts.
Before Laverne reads the next paragraph, there's an argument that we make that the development of a Christ-like character has to do with feeding upon God's prophetic word, and that as we dig in His prophetic word and put it into our mind, there is a supernatural transformation that is accomplished by the power of the Holy Spirit. You know, it's not, we have to put our energies into our part on being obedient, but there's something about eating the prophetic word, the hidden manna, that produces a supernatural change in us. That's why I'm positive this is valid, and I'm positive that these people that are turning away from the prophetic study now, and all they want to talk about is the righteousness of Christ. They're defining a righteousness of Christ with a disregard for truth, and Christ is the truth. It's a denial of genuine righteousness. But here, there's kind of an inference of this supernatural process in what Chuck just read. In the third sentence, it said, and as these apply truth to practice, if we learn truth and we apply it to practice, the still deeper mysteries are stamped on the soul. So there's something that's happening to us internally, supernaturally. To me, what it's implying is we don't understand all these deep mysteries, but in the process of studying, these deep mysteries actually get stamped on us. Something like, you know, you learn this line with this line with this. Yeah, well, this line with this line with this line with this line. You may understand all four of those lines independently of one another, and you may understand them corporately together. But there's things about those four lines that you didn't even recognize that are simultaneously being stamped upon your understanding that is part of the sanctification process. You want to do the next paragraph?
All who understand the Word of God will realize that the things of minor importance, which in the past have occupied their time and consumed their strength, have deprived them of experience and knowledge which they might have obtained had they kept the faith untarnished by selfishness. Had they done this, they would have understood the result of possessing that faith which works by love and purifies the soul.
If you know this animosity that developed between Frank Belden and his auntie, Sister White, and the issue of the literature of evangelism and who he was, when you read the passages where you can find out that she was speaking to him, she's always pushing this guy to understand that last sentence. Had they done this, they would have understood the result of possessing that faith which works by love and purifies the soul. Evidently, he was someone that had an intellectual understanding, but it wasn't being transforming him. And so when you know that, when you're reading these passages, you'll see some of the most specific calls from the spirit of prophecy, and they were to her nephew. But, you know, hundreds of years later, or 100 years later, with no reference on a passage that she's speaking to Frank Belden, you don't see that. But here's the paragraph that I wanted to get to, Sister Kathy.
Let none think, because they cannot explain the meaning of every symbol in the Revelation, that that it is of no use for them to search this book with deep, earnest longing and intense desire to know the meaning of the truths it contains. The one who revealed these mysteries to John can and will give the diligent searcher for truth a foretaste of heavenly things, hereafter to be realized. Rich blessings will come to him who reads and hears the words of this prophecy and keeps those things which are written therein.
So the point I want to put in the record is, like when we're dealing with Esther, we may not understand every detail of Esther, but that isn't a reason not to teach what we know.
Amen.
We'll never understand all. We can't explain every meaning of every symbol in the book of Revelation, but that doesn't mean we don't search it and teach it. Now, when Kathy left this morning, she forgot our notes. Does anyone have our notes?
I do ask you to write that.
You what?
I'll grab them.
Well,
Here, I do.
I have a question.
okay. I just need this as a point of reference. What's your question?
Second Esther, we're told that Esther got to see the king on the 10th month in the 7th year. My question is, was that after the 12 months of purification, Esther had to wait 10 more months before she actually got to see the king? And that's when,
Obviously, the way I understood it was that I went backwards. I said, well, if she went in to see the king the 10th month of the 7th year, and from that point forward, she never left the king.
right,
And you can see that from the passage. So then 12 months prior, she would have been going through the purification. So the 10th month, or 6th year would have been when she went in, and it led up to that point. That's what I thought. When her days were expired from purification, then she goes in.
but when you read the purification for the virgin, it points out that 6 months for this and 6 months for, and all of them had to go through that process, and then they entered into the king's chamber.
Yes.
So that means that all of them had to go through that 12-month process to be purified, and then all of them had to wait their turn till they got into the king. So, and I'm assuming that if they pointed out that on the 10th month, it was Esther's turn, that means there was still a 10-month period that she was waiting her turn to go in.
Why 10 months? I don't understand. Why was there a 10 months period? That's what I'm saying, is that there's no.
You know what you?
Esther second.
Yeah, but by taking these little details, we might not finish the big picture, and you got to finish the big picture because this is the last week of this school.
All right.
So go there. Verse 16 of chapter 2. The question she's raising, it says, so Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So if she had 1 year purification, her purification would have started in the 10th month, in the 6th year of her reign. But if all the question, I guess, that Tanya's raising, if all the virgins went through a 12-month purification process, and then one at a time, one a night, goes into the king, how long does that process take after the purification is finished? And I don't think we have any information that allows us to even bring that into the consideration.
That's what I was saying. I made the assumption, and maybe it's not a good assumption, but I just assumed, well, she went in, she started in the 10th month of the 6th year, and she moved to the 7th month, and the 10th month of the 7th year, and I just made that assumption. But it is reasonable to think, and that there could be a process after the purification that you have to wait to go in. But also I thought maybe they didn't all come at the same point. So maybe it was over the course of years, a couple of years or whatever, and she came later. Either way, I don't know if it really particularly matters.
Well, there was a decree given that all of them, they were to be gathered. And then they were going to 12, and right here says on 15th now on the turn of Esther, so that kind of gives you that she had to wait her turn.
Yeah, but struggling over something that we don't have I get it, but I don't know that we have the information to resolve that. At least not in the next 3 days.
No, I was just giving us a detail that on the 10th month, probably the wedding occurred, that's when he was a bride.
So, my plan was wrecked. I was going to do something and I can't do it. Let's try to finish off the decrees so we can be done with that and start evaluating ourselves. Okay, we place the story of Esther is beginning at 9/11, right?
Yes.
Why?
And it says it's in, well, one reason is it's in Ahasuerus' third year, so that's at least one prophetic indicator.
What's a prophetic indicator about a third year?
Because the third year can be seen as the third angel's message.
Okay, that's kind of a
In
stretch.
context- in context,
That's kind of a stretch, but let's go ahead.
I don't know if it's a stretch, but.
Yeah, but it's pretty far outside the scope of the information base of this group. But you can show that the king's
Well, I mean,
reigns contribute. But
he
what's a
start-
better one than that?
Look, he starts a 180-day feast in
Okay.
his third year. So when you got the third angel, marked with 9/11, because it's in his hand, right? And it's a 180-day feast from that point forward. And we know that 6 months ends at the midnight cry. So, you know, I'm saying in the context of the rest.
No, I'm not following you. You need to be clear about what you're saying. Why do you throw out there that we know the 6 months ends at the midnight cry?
Because Elizabeth's pregnancy.
Okay, so you have to say those things, right? You're making an assumption that everyone knows that. So when it comes to 180 days, you got to deal with the fractal, right? This could be, how's it work? 6 months and 6 months, 180 days from 9/11, the Sunday law. Yes? Or this could be 12 months here. Right? From here to the midnight cry. So you have to deal with that, but that's not what we're looking at. But you should be prepared to teach that. What's another reason for 9/11? What's your best reason if you have to give someone the, and I don't know if there's a better or best, but what's your best reason?
Ezra 7:9,
Ezra 7:9.
first day of the first month.
How does that? Yeah, okay.
Oh, 2 Chronicles 20.
Second Chronicles 29.
15 through 17.
Yeah.
How do these relate to Esther? What is your point of reference in
Because
Esther?
There's a feast in the house, in the palace, and then there's a feast in the court that follows it. So it's the cleansing of the temple and the cleansing of the court.
Okay,
What's
that's your
original
best.
question on relating to 9/11? What's the original question?
Why does Esther?
Why do we're putting most of our emphasis on starting Esther at 9/11. What's your biblical justification for doing that? And for me, my best one, if I have to argue on one, is in chapter 3, verse 7. You want to read that, Brittany?
In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is month Beta.
So that allows you to show that he began casting lots on the first day of the first month.
But what I was saying is that in chapter 1, that doesn't tie into chapter 1 necessarily.
Are there
That doesn't prove chapter 1's in that order.
are there Any chapter divisions in the book?
Well, what I'm saying is that doesn't prove that the Vashti's calling and the rejection and the divorce decree, that doesn't prove
Doesn't
that's
it?
in 9/11. No.
Okay, so what does his decree that begins on the first day of the first month, that ultimately it produces this decree, what is connected with that decree?
The destruction of the Jews.
And the seal. And the work of selecting a certain day. So this is a decree about a day where the seal is given. What decree is that?
This is the third decree.
Okay, so with Ezra 7:9 on the first day of the first month,
No. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. What
I don't
I'm
know if you
saying is-
understand what I'm saying.
I think I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that there's a story in the beginning about a divorce and a calling and all of that. That itself proves it at 9/11. And then you come later, and this is the third chapter is another witness for repeat and enlarge. It starts at 9/11 in chapter.
I asked for your strongest witness, and you talked about 180 days, and Sister Christy talked about Ezra 7:9, and someone else talked about
in Second Chronicles.
Second Chronicles.
Those are the strongest witnesses from chapter 1 to start the book in Esther at 9/11. Those are the
Really?
witnesses.
That's what you think they are?
I think so.
What about Revelation 17, verse 14?
Called, chosen, faith. That's a good one. Yeah.
The-
Because she's called at 9/11.
It's called.
Yep.
That's in your first chapter. I think the strongest one, though, is the first day of the first month.
In
And
Esther
that,
or
in Esther.
But why
And
does that-
Ezra.
Yeah. Why does that
In
start
Ezra.
the book? I don't understand how that answers your question now.
He's
Why
saying
does
their
that
original
start?
time frame.
It's just putting.
No, he just.
No, I wasn't saying at the start of the book. I'm saying, what is your strongest arguments for placing the story of Esther as our starting point of building this structure at 9/11, not at the starting of the book? Okay. We're putting most of our emphasis on 9/11 here on Esther, right? That's what I'm saying. This is, as we build this thing structurally out here, we're going to end up having all three of these decrees. Let's move through the three decrees real quickly so we can get to the last decrees. The first decree we are understanding is the calling and divorce. Calling and divorce. We're saying they're the first decree because they're cause and effect. He calls, some don't come, they're divorced. They're the ones who are going to enter into marriage. What's the second decree?
Gathering.
The gathering of what?
The virgins.
Yeah, but that's a bad question on my part. 2 gatherings. For some reason, we're told there's 2 gatherings. And the third is Haman's. But we haven't dealt recently with the fourth, which we mark here. So let's deal with that in Esther 8. Where do we want to start? Probably chapter 8, verse 7. I don't know, we have to read it all, but at least 7 through 10. Brother Jim?
7 through 10.
Yep.
Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring, for the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Sivan, on the 3 and 12th day thereof.
20th,
I'm sorry?
3 and 20th.
Thank you. on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and to the deputies, and to the rulers and provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and set letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries.
Okay, why do we, what do we call this? Defend themselves?
A counter decree.
Counter decree. Why do we place it here? I mean, we can go back in and read all the context of Esther, but we should know this. Go ahead.
I don't know actually.
You don't know actually.
Because
What's already happened in this story here?
Haman's been
We've got two, yeah.
When you said that decree actually
downloads.
was written before the Sunday law and was sent out before the Sunday law?
Pardon me?
Because we placed that the Sunday law that Haman placed was supposed to go into effect on the 12th month, on the 13th day, which we kind of count that as the Sunday law. But from that time, when as soon as they found out the decree on the 3rd month, they tried to reverse it, and that went out before that counter decree on Sunday law. It gave them, actually from the 3rd month to the 12th month, they gave them several months for them to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I don't know.
the 7th.
We're not denying any of that.
No, it's practical. It expands out because the 70 days from the midnight cry to the Sunday law puts us at the 23rd day of the 3rd month, and that's where this is happening on the 23rd day of the 3rd month. So that's the end of the 70.
The 23rd day of the 3rd month.
And that forces us into understanding that it's there, but also like you're saying, the image of the beast was already erected, and Haman's already been hung. So we have to be right there at the Sunday law.
The 10 sons hung.
Ah, that comes later.
I guess what I'm trying to say that it was sent out on the 23rd day, 3rd month, but it was supposed to be going in effect on the 12th month, on the 13th day of that month.
Yeah, we know that. That's down here. Where the decree is going to be fulfilled in terms of the.
Or the death decree. Oh, I see. This is Sunday law and the death decree. Okay.
Okay, so where was the decree of Haman written? No, point in time.
When?
It was written on the 1st month, on the 13th day of the month.
It's written right here, right? First, Haman's decree, first day, 13th
First
day,
month,
13th day, first
Month.
month. And when is this written?
23rd day of the 3rd month.
So how many days from here to here?
70.
70.
Okay.
70? Wow.
So in this history, and this is a point that we haven't been evidently being real clear about, they first build the scaffold, what's it called?
Gallows.
Yeah.
Gallows. Who builds it?
Haman.
Yeah, his
His
wife.
wife.
But his wife's suggestion, okay? So when you have Haman and his wife together, who is Haman?
He's the state.
He's the state.
He's the state.
And who's the woman?
She's the
She's the church. Together they make the scaffold, the image of the beast, but
Gallows.
the gallows. And but all by himself in this story. Who's Haman?
United States.
The USA. Okay, and who's he a descendant of?
Agagite.
An Agagite. And what's an Agagite? What's Agag mean? What is it? It's a title for a king of the Amalekites. Right? Okay, so this is taking us back to the Amalekites. Who are the Amalekites?
They're the first people who really actively opposed God's people
The first people that actively oppose God's people when?
in time.
after they crossed the Red Sea, and they wanted to totally wipe out God's people,
Okay, so
and they never changed their purpose.
okay, so go to Psalm 83. And we know that Jesus appointed the ancient people to illustrate the end because he is the one that illustrates the end from the beginning. And in Psalm 83, there is a group of people that have that same intent. Verse 1 says, "Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult." And in the book of Esther, there's a verse that says directly that Haman is, anyone remember? The enemy of God's people. It's stated just
8:1.
black and white. 8:1, read it.
On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And this is the same day that Haman was hanged on the gallows. Verse 10, on chapter 10, points that out. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen.
Okay, so in verse 2, "For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones." Was there any hidden ones in the story? That were dealing with-
Yeah, Esther.
Esther's
was
hidden.
She hid.
Because she hadn't revealed who she was. They have said, verse 4, "Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they've consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee." So, the Amalekites are the enemy of God's people in the beginning, and they represent the enemy of God's people all the way through down through history. And in what Karen shared yesterday in, was it Exodus 17? Go there.
Verse 8. Verse
And Sister Madison, will you read 2 verses beginning in verse 8 of chapter 17 of Exodus, and we'll just go to the end of chapter 2 verses each. Madison, Christy, Tanya.
Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, Choose unto us out men, and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand up on top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand.
What's Rephidim? It's the refreshing. This is a battle that goes on during the time period of the latter rain. 2 verses, Sister Christy.
So Joshua did as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed.
Sister Tanya.
No, verse
12 and 13.
But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited the Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua. For I will utterly put out of remembrance of Amalek, the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi, for he said, Because the Lord has sworn that the Lord would have war with Amalek from generation to generation.
So this is a symbol of what in the book of Revelation? I would be amazed if you could pull that answer that I'm looking for out. This is the seals. The seals are the external. In the prophetic line, there is always going to be a revelation of the external activities of the enemies of God's people from the beginning, from generation to generation. And the symbol of this is Amalek.
So the, what you just said, the external history only relates to the enemies of God's people. Is that,
Well, not only, but yeah, that's the primary theme. Whereas the churches, the primary theme is the internal workings of God's church.
okay.
The trumpets is the judgments of God upon rebellion.
Yeah, and the way I understand it too with the internal external is that it's all in relation to the church anyways. You know, it's like the internals specifically dealing with the church, the externals specifically dealing with the governments, but it's all in relation to the church.
Okay, so when Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt, what's that?
Judgment.
The judgment. But what's the pillar?
Closed door.
Both of them
Go ahead.
represent covenant history, entering into covenant.
It's a memorial. A pillar is a memorial. They built a memorial here to this battle. What's the Feast of Tabernacles?
It's a memorial.
It's a memorial. What are memorials?
Something to remember, something to.
Yeah, but when they took a heap of stones and set it up,
Oh, where am I?
it's a waymark. A memorial is a waymark. So here in the story of Moses, Amalek is being marked as a waymark. And it says, and the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book. And why am I emphasizing this?
Because later.
In Purim. In Purim, the Purim is a memorial that they are supposed to commemorate throughout their generations forever. And what's Purim associated with?
Judgment, casting lots.
Yeah, but what event took place in the history of the Jews that marks Purim? The deliverance from Amalek. It's the same memorial. This memorial here is the memorial of Purim. Is it not? Did the Lord deliver Israel from Amalek in this story of Moses and Joshua?
Yes.
And did he deliver the Jews in the story of Purim in the book of Esther?
Yes.
Do all the prophets teach the same story? So this is the waymark. The waymark, whatever Purim is down here at the end, it is an established waymark in prophetic history.
And Amalek was the grandson of Esau, and the Lord, rescued his brother from the hands of Esau too.
Yeah, and where was he when he did that? Where was it that they came together?
At some brook. And they just.
Was it Bethel where he wrestled with the angel in advance of that meeting? But anyway, so I just want to put in place this memorial about Purim before we return to the book of Esther. Let's go back to the book of Esther. This decree here, this counter decree. What decree is it?
It would be the fourth degree.
It'd be the fourth decree. But is that all we know about it? What decree is it? When's it come into history?
Right there. During the
It's the Sunday law decree.
Yeah.
It's Haman's decree. Is it not? What does Haman's decree possess with it?
The other two
Death,
decrees.
hatred.
The seal of
The seal.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What does this decree possess with it? The seal. These are the same decrees, right? At one level.
It's a seal.
This is the Sunday law decree. He's begins figuring out the day back here, and by the 13th day of the first month, it's written into writing, and it takes effect right here when he's killed. But the Sunday law is going to continue going through history, right? Yes?
Yep.
So when does this Haman's, another connection that say that these are the same decree, Haman's has a specific day for the enactment. What is that?
It's one day.
13th.
13th day of the 12th month.
So 13th day of the 12th month. What about Esther's decree. 13th day of the 12th month. It's the same decree. They both have the seal of God, and they both have the
They're both a death decree, but one towards the Jew and one towards the enemies of the Jews.
they're both a death decree, depending on how you relate to it. So the same decree. It's this one. Esther's is no doubt identifying when this decree is moving through the world, and Haman's pointing to the Sunday law in the United States, right? So are we saying that this decree here is the death decree?
Yeah. I think
Haman definitely.
I thought we had a separate waymark for the death decree.
I thought we had a separate waymark for the death decree.
Well, we have a death decree for,
Where's the death decree?
in the United States. and then we have-
No, in Esther.
Oh, in Esther. It's true. Esther death decree or Haman's death decree?
Was it Esther 8:17
Okay, let's find it. Esther 8:17.
or 14 or 17?
15, 15.
No, that's just the outcome of it.
How about, whose turn to read? Mine?
Yep.
Okay,
Michael's.
chapter 9.
It's Michael's turn.
It's Michael's turn. Chapter 9, verses
10,
10,
5.
5. Let's redo 2 verses each. Let's read down from starting with chapter 10, verse 5. 2 verses each.
10 verse 5.
Chapter 9, verse 5.
Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men.
And Parshandatha and Dalphon and Aspatha and Paratha and Adalia and Aridatha and Parmashata and Arisai and Aradai and Vajazatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the sons of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. 2 verses, Brother Chuck.
On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. Or what is thy request further? And it shall be done.
So this first decree, it's reached its fulfillment. The 13th day of the 12th month has arrived. The battle has begun, right?
Right.
Then they're going into the king and saying, these are the people that have died in the city. And now the king, after this decree has arrived in history and it's taken effect, the king's asking her, what else? You want to read too, Sister Laverne?
Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree. And let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done, and the decree was given at Shushan. And they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were, is that it?
Just two.
What?
So, who are the 10 sons? I guess we have to nail that down first. The 10 kings. So, in order to get this straight, don't forget the fractals that you'll have to do. That's what this is up here to remind us of. But we're not doing them right now. So we are erasing that. So what do you have to put into this history to make sense of the 10 kings? You have to identify that Haman's the United States, right? So Haman is the 6th kingdom of Bible prophecy. So where does Haman die? And who is the seventh kingdom? Who takes
The
over?
10
The
kings.
10 sons. This is the seventh kingdom. This kingdom ends, and this kingdom begins. And what happens on the 13th day of the first month, or the 12th month?
The other one.
The sons die.
The sons die. This is the end of what?
7th.
End of the 7th. How to express that, all right? Then what happens?
In the beginning of the 8th.
There's a request of Esther for them to be hung, even though they're dead.
Okay, so now they're hung upon a tree. What is that?
That's a double.
What's the hanging on the tree?
Cursed
It's
is
curse. How many curses are there in this history?
Who?
2. There's a curse here, right? Why?
Because he's hanging on a tree.
Because Haman's hung upon a tree. And there's a curse here. What's the curse?
25:20.
25:20? 7 times? Okay, so somewhere before the curse, the 7th kingdom of Bible prophecy ends and the 8th starts. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone with me on this? This is the ending. Stop. And then this curse is this the death decree? Or is this when the universal Sunday law takes place?
The universal Sunday law is where this 8th comes in, isn't it?
No. You know better. You're trying to raise this.
The
Issue.
universal Sunday law comes before the death decree.
The universal Sunday law comes before the death decree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because that's the closest.
And the universal Sunday law, maybe it's one of these, okay? Maybe it's one of these. I'm not denying that. I'm going to put it up here because we have an established point of reference here. The close of probation is at the universal.
I thought that's when the 10 sons were hung.
Yeah.
Okay. You're saying that's when the 10 sons are hung.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
think we
Because the image of
talked
the beast
about
has to
before.
be
And then
put up in
after all
the world, and then
It
they
been
are
after
hung
that.
on it.
Okay, there's a decree here though, right? This is the universal Sunday law decree.
Small d.
What?
Small d.
You were told to use a small
Small
d so
d.
people can
No.
figure out that you wrote.
Oh,
no, that's when he's,
okay.
no, that's when he's writing dates.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was specific.
So Michael stands up here.
Yeah.
But we know the death decree comes after Michael stands up, right?
Yeah.
They did, then.
Yeah, it was the first days. And so,
The 13th day of the 12th month is the close of probation.
the 13th day of the 12th month is what?
The close of probation.
It's this one? Why?
That's not when they're hung, no, it's when they die.
That's what?
It's not when they're hung, it's when they die. The close of probation is when they're hung. So the universal Sunday law is when they're hung on the gallows, I thought. That's how we marked it. 'Cause
No,
then
they
it would
die
be the
first
gallows
and then
precede the Sunday law. Just
Okay,
like
this isn't Esther. This is from the layout
Yes.
in Inspiration.
Yes.
But now, as we're dealing with Esther, where do we corporately understand that the 10 sons die?
Before the universal Sunday law.
Where and when?
Oh.
That little space before.
They die at the 13th day
of the 12th month.
of the 12th month.
Yeah, they die on that day.
Why are you shaking your head
They
no?
die, yes, they die, but they're hung a day after.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's
they're
day
hung a
after,
day
or
after.
later.
There's a secondary decree to hang them.
Yeah.
Yes? So somewhere, where do I put it?
Put one.
Where they die.
Right.
They die on the 13th day of the 12th month. Where do I put that here?
The cop.
It's after the Universal Sunday Law.
After the Universal
No,
Sunday
it's
Law.
right, it's right
Right
at
there.
it.
No, it's right there.
This is
Because
the
death
13th
decree
day.
comes after, and it was the day
And
of the
then
death decree, wasn't it?
They're
that
hung
they
right
were killed?
afterwards, right? It's implemented
The next day.
next day.
They're hung the 14th day of the 12th month.
Okay, 13th day.
Yeah.
One day later.
I don't know.
They're hung.
Are we gonna take in consideration that a bunch of the people from there joined the Jews because of their fear?
No, we're not going to do that until we get this started. Stop finding it lies. Everyone's comfortable that on the 13th day, this is when the 10 sons die, and this is the universal Sunday law.
We never marked it that way before.
Yes, we did.
We were marking the hangman's noose on this side, not to be spacious, John, but that means that we were marking the close of probation as the hangman's noose. So,
Yeah.
So
it,
you would do it right
13th day's
before
gotta be
there, and then the
before
close
that.
of probation would be where they
seventh
get
kingdom.
hung.
the seventh kingdom has to end
I mean,
before the close of probation, so the
implement
8th
it.
can be.
Okay,
Die
let's
and-
add a line of prophecy into this. Whose turn to read? Kathy?
uh,
Laverne?
You run.
Kathy?
I read.
Revelation 13, 11, 14, and 15.
Revelation 13.
11 and verses 14 and 15.
Okay, there's two requests of Esther on verse 13. Esther is asking the king, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree. And that Haman's 10 sons be hung upon the gallows. So there's two requests there. It's requesting that the Jews again do destruction as they did that day, and then the 10 sons to be hung.
Yeah, the son, they're hung the next day. And they're asking permission to continue the battle.
What was it?
Revelation.
Revelation 13, 11.
And then, verses 11, 14, 14.
And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And
Okay, when does the United States speak as a dragon?
Sunday law.
At the Sunday law. But what reaches its complete fulfillment at the Sunday law?
The image of the beast.
The image of the beast. The image of the beast is fully formed at the Sunday law, and you know that it's fully formed because the Protestants have the ability to have the political structure past the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast, the image of the beast, they come together at the Sunday law, but the United States speaks at the Sunday law, and the gallows is built before.
Right.
Where's the gallows built? It's built from the midnight cry
Sunday law.
to the Sunday law. And at the Sunday law, when the United States speaks, the mark of the beast is enforced and the image of the beast is fully erected. Go ahead. Verse 14 and 15.
13 and 14, 12 and 13.
No, you're skipping over those two. Going to
Sorry,
14 and
14
15.
and 15, and deceiveth them that dwell.
And the United States deceiveth them. Go ahead.
Deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword and did live.
What's he doing here? What's that telling us? What's the United States doing?
He's influencing
Deceiving
them to make
The
it
whole earth.
Who's them?
the world,
The entire
the
world.
United Nations,
That the whole world now is going to do what?
make an image to the beast.
And what's an image of the beast?
It's a combination of church and
Church
state,
and
where the
state,
church is in
church and
control of
state.
the relationship.
Okay, so
It's a visual.
when does the church come in control of the relationship?
The
At the
Sunday
Sunday
law.
Oh.
So it would be a
No, no.
universal Sunday law.
No. The first they command the world to set up an image of the beast. In verse 14. When does that take place?
Just before the Sunday law.
I'm thinking 9/11, but it hasn't
No,
come
no,
to
no, no,
fruition.
no, it's down here. It's past the
Okay.
Sunday law in the United States. The Sunday law in the
The
United
Sunday
States
law
is
is verse
after
11.
9/11.
Right. But I mean, but it didn't just happen overnight. It was in the works. So you put Haman's seal.
Okay, well, you're
Okay,
missing my
okay,
point.
okay.
Let me define my question a little bit. What's the definition of the image of the beast?
The image of the beast is a combination
State
of
with the
church and
church
state
in
where the
control.
church is in control.
Okay, so if the United States commands the world to set up the combination of church and state with the church in control of the relationship, that's the construction of this gallows here. And where is that?
Well, that's for the 10 sons of Haman, Esther's requesting. Those are for 10 sons of Haman that actually died the day before.
Now, when is the gallows erected?
Before the close of probation.
Before it speaks.
Right.
Before
Because Kathy hasn't read verse 15 yet. In verse 15, this image is going to speak. Before it speaks, it is built. It was built here before it speaks.
spoke.
So verse 14 is talking about when this world image of the beast is built. When is the world image of the beast built? In Revelation 17. Keep your finger in 13, Kathy, because you're not done. But go to Revelation 13, or Revelation 17, I'm sorry. And
Verse 13.
verse 13?
Yeah.
No.
Looking for
10.
Yeah.
How about verse 17, chapter 17, 17. Sister Brittany?
For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled.
What's their kingdom?
Seventh kingdom.
It's the seventh kingdom. But what is it? What's it consist of?
Their power.
The authority. Okay, modern Rome was three parts: the beast, dragon, the false prophet. Each one of those, the beast, dragon, and false prophet, represent one aspect of modern Babylon. What is the aspect that the beast, the dragon, the false prophet represent?
the threefold.
Don't guess unless you know. Okay, Brother Jim, keep your finger there. You're still going to read verse 15. Read Revelation 13, verse 2.
And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority.
What's the USA in that scenario?
It's the seat.
You're guessing.
It's the
No, I was just
It's
figuring
it's the power. What's the power?
It's the arms that stand on his part.
military.
It's
military.
Military and economic is the
And
power.
economic.
What's the authority?
Yep.
It's the political authority. Kings, governors, and rulers have taken upon themselves the brand of Antichrist and are represented as the dragon. It's the political structure that the papacy
Is a seat.
is going to govern, because they're going to lift up one head, and the papacy is going to be seated on this arrangement. So when in Revelation 17:17, when the 10 kings agree to give their kingdom unto the beast, this is the beast, this is the dragon, what are they giving to the papacy?
Power, their authority, and the seat.
They're given the state. The image of the beast is the combination of church and state, with the church in control of the relationship. They're giving the political structure to the papacy in Revelation 17:17. And what is that? That's Haman's gallows all over again. Right? Now verse 15.
And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast.
The United States had power to bring this gallows
Back to life.
to life.
That the image of the beast should both speak speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
So, first in verse 14, they command the world to set up an image of the beast. And then in verse 15, it speaks. And what is the speaking in prophecy?
Legislative.
Action of the legislative and judicial authorities, but where does it take place?
Sunday law.
At the Sunday law, Revelation 13:11, the United States speaks. Who else speaks at the Sunday law?
Zechariah.
Zechariah speaks at the Sunday law. He's no longer dumb. Who else speaks?
The dumb ass.
The dumb ass speaks at the Sunday law in the story of Balaam. So when there's a speaking that takes place, what's it marking? With the emphasis on the word marking. Pardon me?
Oh,
It's the mark of the beast.
oh.
Right? This is the Sunday law. This is the mark of the beast. When you see the speaking, it's saying mark of the beast. So when it speaks here, what is it?
It's the mark of the beast in the world.
The mark of the beast in the world.
It's the mark of the beast.
So is that universal Sunday?
Yeah. But before the universal Sunday law, what has to be built?
Gallows.
But
The gallows.
They never tore the other gallows down.
Yeah, I know.
Same gallows.
That's true. They never did. You're not making that distinction. You're making the distinction between these two gallows, that Haman dies here and his 10 sons die here.
1 versus 10 gallows.
Yeah, same gallows, but
They added 9. I don't know.
no. Well, who are these guys?
The enemy of the Jews.
They're the, what do you call
The
them, the
United
brothers
Nations.
or the?
They're the United Nations, but they're his 10 sons. But they're the 10 sons of who? Haman. I mean, it's a similar relation to Ahab and the 10 tribes. It's the ships of Tarshish and the other merchants. There's a relationship that is connected by the family, Haman and Haman's 10 sons.
Just a question, when Esther is telling the king what she would like to happen, isn't that kind of like a situation where she's in control of him, telling him what he should do?
Well, he's given her permission. But
So I'm just saying, could that also be another image of the beast that we're trying to put there, the gallows? For, at another level than what we're,
what else would you want me to do? So she's a woman, she's a church telling Ahasuerus, implement this decree. Okay, so that's a symbol, but this here in Revelation 17, what is it?
That's where the 7th dies and the 8th.
The 7th dies. They agree to give their kingdom
Or not.
to the 8th kingdom. The 7th dies here, and the 8th begins, and then in verse 15, what happens? It speaks. Image of the beast test leading to the mark of the beast. Right here, what happens?
close of probation.
And what is the classic statement in Sister White says is, the Lord has shown me clearly that the image of the beast will be formed before probation closes. For it is the great test for the people of God by which their eternal destiny will be decided. So that expression of hers fits here just like it fits here for the Sunday law in the United States. The image of the beast is formed before probation closes. For it is a great test of the people of God. This people of God is Adventism. This people of God is the 11th hour workers, by which their eternal destiny will be decided. This is the test they must pass before they're sealed. Okay? In this history, they got to pass this test before they're sealed. And they're sealed at the Sunday law that's progressive, one country at a time, after the United States is falling. And Sister White says the same tests will come upon our people in every country. So it's happening repeatedly, and then it reaches here to the universal Sunday law, and here's where human probation closes. So the gallows, the 10 sons die before they're hung on the gallows. So when did they die?
13th day.
It's the 13th day of the 12th month. But the next day they're hung upon the gallows. So what's that? 14th day of the 12th month. So, is that how we explained it before?
That is how I understood it.
No, we had the death decree.
Yeah, we got a death decree to still deal with, because we know there's a death decree from the other history. We're
The Haman's death decree is not really that death decree?
No, but in the death decree that takes place after Michael stands up during the time of the plagues, why is it that the wicked want to destroy the Sabbath keepers?
Because of all the plagues and all the destruction of the world.
They think all the plagues are being brought about by who?
By them,
By the Sabbath keepers. So it's still a Sunday law issue all the way through. Even after probation closes, it's still a Sunday law issue because they think the judgments are brought by these faithful Sabbath keepers who are as a what?
Mordecai.
Mordecai at the gate. So they're all Sunday law.
So what would you put the universal Sunday law?
We just did.
Is it over there where you have the gallows?
It's right here.
Okay.
It
Why
comes in
can't you
that.
do the building of the gallows before the close of probation, and the close of probation is the 13th day, and then right after the close of probation is the 14th day?
Because the gallows were not done till after those 10 sons had died. The
No,
revelation-
I know, I'm saying the building of the gallows came before the close of probation.
What is the gallows?
Image of the beast.
It's the tree.
It's the image of the beast. What is the definition of the image of the beast? Combination of church and state.
With the church
In order for the image of the beast to be erected in this history, what has to happen? The 10 sons of Haman have to give their kingdom to the beast. That's where they die. The 7th kingdom dies where Haman's 10 sons die, and thereafter they're going to be hung upon the gallows.
They can't.
So they died on the 13th day of the 12th month. They're going to get hung on the gallows on the 14th day of the 12th month.
They cannot speak until they have this alliance with the papacy. Just like the United States doesn't speak until they've already formed the image. You have to have this council's
Set
already
up.
got to be set up, so then they can speak. So yeah, it has to be they're here, they give their kingdom, and then there they speak. But I was wondering maybe if the death decree is the actual hanging of them on the gallows, but like they speak, and then as a result there's a death decree, and then they're hanging on the gallows, and the close of probation would be marked.
Well, this death decree
That would be the 14th.
is different than the universal.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is that the 14th day would actually be the death decree, but I don't know what.
Why? When you know that this is the close of probation and you know that this is after the close of probation, why are you trying to make them the same?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that the close of probation's here, the universal Sunday law, and then at that point Esther comes in and says, "Hey, we got to deal with these sons and the people in the palace."
She's
and
talking here,
Oh, she's talking there.
isn't she? On the 13th day, she goes in and says, here's the report. 500 of them died in Shushan. This many died here. Do you have any other request? Yeah, I have one other request. Go ahead and hang him on the gallows tomorrow.
No, and then let them kill him again. One thing that I
Let them kill him again.
Yeah, I mean, let them kill some more.
Yeah,
because
continue the battle.
Right.
Yeah, we're not through even with the days yet. We got the 13th, 14th, and the 15th.
But then we're saying that both the 3rd and 4th decrees are enforced before the close of probation.
Are in force.
They're enforced. Like the 3rd decree the 4th decree. Actually, the 3rd and 4th.
They're the
are
same
enforced-
decree.
Right, are enforced on the 13th day of the 12th month.
Yep, this is when they have the legal authority to kill.
But it gets
Before
extended
the
to the
close of
14th.
probation. I don't know.
Yeah, before the close of probation. There's persecution in this history. There's people that die before Michael stands up.
There are many martyrs.
Maranatha 199 says there will be many martyrs. So this death decree it's too late for actual martyrs. So there's martyrdom that takes place in this history, but the death decree that is the subject of prophecy doesn't actually produce any martyrs. It's a different waymark.
I don't know if you noticed, but in almost every occasion you have a doubling. In the first degree you have a calling, then you have a divorce. In the second gather you have two gatherings. In the Haman degree you have a Haman degree, and then you have a counteract of the degree. Then you've got, there's like a two things happening in the same thing. Does that mean something?
I don't know, but if it does, it's outside the scope of what we're trying to nail down right here. Are we all following this?
You have, before the close of probation, you've got the 13th day of the 12th month. That's when, this is what I'm trying to figure out. So you've got that lined up. The 14th day is death decree, and then afterwards, I guess I'm trying to figure
No,
out.
the
if it's
14th
lining
day is
up.
the 14th day. I can race that off if you want.
Okay, so the 14th day is when they get hung, so that would be.
The
right?
curse.
That would be the curse. So when have you gone over the 15th day then?
No, we're not
Oh,
there.
We're not there yet, okay.
But why do we mark the death of the 10 sons here?
Because they
that's what
die
it
when they
says.
give their kingdom over, just like the sixth dies when they give
They
his
are the
kingdom.
seventh kingdom.
Yes, and they have to die.
They have to die for
even though
the
they're
8th.
hung later.
Is that where in Revelation 17 verse 10?
17.
17 verse 10, where it talks about the 7
Five are
kings?
fallen.
Yeah,
5 are fallen.
Yeah, but in verse 17, speaking of the seventh kingdom, which is the 10 kings in Revelation 17, it says that they have agreed to give their kingdom unto the beast.
So that would be on the 13th day of the 12th month.
Yeah, that's when they are the seventh kingdom and they give themselves into the hands of the papacy, thus they die. They die. The seventh kingdom dies right where the 8th kingdom begins. The 7th kingdom begins right where the 6th kingdom dies.
And the 6th
And
kingdom.
where did this? Who's the 6th kingdom?
Haman dies. Or
Who
Haman-
is the 6th kingdom?
The United States.
Where did they begin?
They began,
In 1798. What happened in 1798?
The fifth kingdom.
The papacy received the deadly wound,
But the
and the 6th kingdom began. The 6th kingdom dies, the 7th kingdom begins, the 7th kingdom dies, the 8th kingdom begins. The 7th kingdom is the 10 horns, it's Haman's 10 sons. They die the day before they're hung on the gallows.
then verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, he shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Where would we put that in there?
Maybe that.
Why would we worry about that before we resolve
Because-
this?
Because it sounds like the seventh power, which are the 10 kings, I'm assuming, right? We're killing them before they actually get to destroy the whore.
Oh, so, what's the problem with that? Where's your example for this relationship? 7th dies, 8th begins. Well, no. On the board here, where's your example? It's here.
Yeah.
6th kingdom died, 7th begins. When the 6th kingdom dies, when the United States dies, does the United States leave history?
No, it's still there.
It's still there. It still has a role to play. It's Ahab. It's the ships of Tarshish. So the fact that the 10 sons die here, the 7th kingdom dies here, does it mean that they leave history? They still don't have a role to play?
Yeah.
They're still there.
Well, I mean, it's just like the Ottoman Empire. They gave up their supremacy, but I mean, they were still there. They were still
They're
there.
still-
It just
yeah. They got something to do down here where they destroyed the papacy. Okay, let's go back to Esther. I don't know that we're got time to get to Purim or Purim. Okay, someone pronounce it.
I don't know.
Purim? 9:31, 32. Whoever's turn it is. Let's start before that. Let's start in verse 20. We got 6 minutes or so. I'll start. We'll just go around one verse each. Chapter 9 of Esther, verse 20. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letter unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both nigh and far. Brother Chuck.
To establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same year.
As the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor.
And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them.
Because Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had advised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is the lot, to consume them and to destroy them.
But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows.
Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all of the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them,
The Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to the writing, and according to their appointed time every year.
And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed.
Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim.
And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth.
To confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed, and for matters of the fastings and their cry, and the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. What days were they to keep as a memorial?
14 and 15
Okay, so
of the 12 month.
yeah, the 12th month. This here, are they keeping this one?
No,
No.
Okay, they're keeping this one and this one.
when they overcame, yeah.
Go ahead.
Brittany noticed something interesting that there's villagers and there's city people
Right.
of Jews, and the villagers, they only killed on the 13th, but the city people killed on the 13th and the 14th and rested on the 15th. So they're commemorating the slaughter or whatever, but they're commemorating the 2 days of rest. One rested on, the villagers rested on the 14th, but the city people rested on the 15th. So they're commemorating both days of rest when the fighting stopped. I
There's
don't
two
know what
groups-
that means, but it's an interesting dynamic
groups
to
of
add to the
Jews.
story.
The
There's
one
two
group
groups
is
of
in
Jews.
Shushan and the other is in the king's provinces.
Okay, we'll have to take that up tomorrow because of time, but where we're at here is that they're going to commemorate the 14th and the 15th. And what took place on the 14th and the 15th?
Well,
The rest.
the first day of the first day, we had the Passover on the 14th. Are we talking about?
No. That's the first month. I'm saying what happened in this history. This is the deliverance of God's people from their enemies,
Yes.
right? So that's Exodus 17 all over again.
Oh,
Right.
from the Amalekite.
Amalekite. This is supposed to be a memorial from generation to generation in Exodus 17, and here the same history is to be a memorial. So what's a memorial?
It's a waymark.
It's a waymark. So, is this one waymark or two waymarks?
I think it's like one connected. I don't know.
Okay, so what you're saying is,
These are the days of rest.
what Brittany is saying is the cities here,
I don't know.
Village
Village.
and
The
cities
king's
there, but
provinces.
village and cities.
yeah.
The country versus.
Actually, on the
the
third,
city-
We'll have to read it tomorrow.
the
Because we
13
don't have
and
it clear
14
enough.
in Sushan, they killed, there's two different numbers set
Yeah.
for Sushan, and the 13 and the 14, so they did killing in the city twice in the 2 days.
The
Yeah, they
Jews in
killed in the city.
Shushan killed a different number of people than the Jews did in the king's provinces.
Yes. But then the next day, see, the 2 days of commemoration are the days they rested. The people outside of Shushan, they rested on the 14th. They stopped killing. And the people in Shushan, they killed on the 14th, but they rested on the 15th.
They
So
were,
there's the 2 days of rest. It's the commemoration.
So
of the
there's a rest here
and a rest there.
and a rest there. We'll have to confirm this tomorrow.
and it says the unwalled towns, so the villagers were from the unwalled towns.
Yes.
I think that's pretty cool.
External and internal.
Extra, I don't know. The wall.
Two classes of God's people there. Brother Chuck, do you want to pray?
Father in heaven, we thank you again for another beautiful day of life and for sustaining our lives another day. We thank you for being able to be together and study the book of Esther and see where we stand in this time of this world. Thank you for Brother Jeff bringing the message to us, and we pray for the Holy Spirit that we might have understanding of what He brings to us. Help us to be your servants as we go this day and live for you and for Jesus. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.